Well, Darrin, welcome. I'm certainly excited to learn more about Ignite Happy and certainly what got you there and, just what you're doing with the with your company and, how you're helping people, through this. And so maybe you could just explain a little bit to folks that don't know about Ignite Happy and, really what it's all about.
Hey Scott, great to be here with you. Thanks for having me on your podcast. Love what you're doing.
Excellent.
Uh, Ignite Happy it's been a journey. It is something that like anything in life, when we transform or change, it takes time. And I had an awakening about 4 years ago that
Hmm.
I started to see things differently. And what I recognized at that point is my happiness wasn't what I thought it was. And
Yeah.
in fact, I started to explore that. I started to write a business plan. I started to just dig in to see where happiness really existed. And what formed was this company called Ignite Happy after many
Yeah.
events and stories. And it really got me to get out to the world in a different way.
What were some of those things that you started to kind of realize for yourself or just start to maybe like question or maybe
Sure.
just had an experience? I know for myself, part of my transformation came after taking care of my mother. And so that was a huge life altering event that really
Mm.
made me kind of question a lot of things. And so how did, how did that transition for you?
Yeah, you're spot on about life altering events. Sometimes we need to get uncomfortable to start to see things differently and appreciate and have gratitude in different ways. For me,
Yeah.
I was actually at a diversity and inclusion event,
Hmm.
and I went into that event with 25 other people. There were four people like me as a white male, and through those 4 days of immersion together, I basically woke up, and it was
Yeah.
during that time where I realized I wasn't living my purpose. I went into that event with a purpose of bringing out the best of myself and those around me every day.
Hmm. Yeah.
And when I realized I was doing that for people that were like me,
Hmm. Yeah.
that were similar to me, based on maybe neighborhood, community, things we like, I wasn't comfortable with difference. And I
Well,
realized at that point, as I uncovered an unconscious bias that was terrifying. I had to come out with.
Well, and that's what you just said there, unconscious bias. I think that that's a huge term that people don't really talk about. They don't really hear. I was fortunate enough to go through and be when I was part of Hanover, part of their inclusion and diversity board that they were starting to build to really, open it up to more of the organization. And one thing that we did a lot of training in, and I've always been an individual. When I first started recruiting, I got trained as a diversity recruiter. I certainly
That's
understood
great.
that while, I don't necessarily, and we were just kind of talking about this, I'm certainly, don't have racist tendencies in any way, shape, or form, but just that in itself isn't enough, right? And unfortunately, too many people like myself thought it was enough in the past, and we realized that it truly isn't enough anymore. That we can't just sit silent anymore. But
Hmm.
unconscious bias is really something that people don't explore and people don't even truly understand until they go through training, of just really what you bring to the table with each and every thought and decision and action that you take, especially when you're not being mindful about who you are and what you're doing. A lot of these things can just naturally dictate what you do and how you say. And so, can you just tell me a little bit more about that training for yourself, and what were maybe some of the things afterwards that you really said, okay, I want to work on this? And obviously, the
Hmm.
company came from that, but what were the steps that got you to start thinking about building Ignite Happy from that event?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, I agree with you too. It's about every interaction that we live in where we need to take notice. And for folks listening, I would ask us to just be present and ask yourself: are you really all in on this topic? Or are you carrying it a different way? Are you curious about if you are acting in ways that may have racist tendencies? I agree. I don't think we view ourselves in that way,
Mm-hmm.
that we would ever go down that path. Yeah, what I realized at this D&I event, we were going through 4 days of conversations, and we were working with each other morning, day, and night. Literally, we're
Mm-hmm.
staying in the same complex. We got to know each other very well.
Yeah.
Our mutual friend Nakia, who is one of the people that I got to know very well there. And the first 2 days, you found out where people were from, what they were made of, what got them excited, what brought joy to them, their families, all this stuff. And then we started to get comfortable with each other. And when we started to get comfortable with each other, we started to share the frustrations of what's going on in the world,
Yeah.
and the frustrations of how people are treated. And going into this event, it was recognized that the U.S. society is built based on a white male culture.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a recognition at that point that we were talking about the issues where people feel belittled, people feel like they were talked down to, people feel like they're pulled over in their car, they feel like they're looked at unfairly, unjustly, inappropriately at times, just because of the way they look.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as we were going through those events, and everybody was sharing something, and again, I was one of 5 white males out of 25 people with 20 non-white males. And I started to recognize that I wasn't seeing that until I started to hear people that I started to really know,
Mm.
started to get to care about, to recognize that, wow, this is real.
You know, it
And these
was,
issues are all around us.
it was crazy. I read a story one time where a gentleman talked about how he didn't want to go for a walk in his neighborhood because by himself, because he feared that just a normal walk in around his neighborhood could result in some way him being, targeted for some reason, and he didn't feel safe. And I had just come off of a weekend of doing this David Goggins thing where he runs 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. And so I've had a hip replacement, so I only walked it, but I wanted to do this thing. And so I was walking at 1 in the morning, at 5 in the morning, at 11 at night, or whatever it was. And it never once dawned on me that I was potentially in danger from like the police for walking around my neighborhood, something that I should feel protected. And so that article really kind of slapped me in the face even more so when it was just like, I didn't even realize my unconscious bias, right? Like the things that I take for granted, other people worry about. And that's really what that really kind of comes down to, is that perspective that, hey, unless you understand that other individual's perspective, you don't even know that you have this bias right now. You don't even understand that you have that. And so that's where I believe, just conversation and just talking to people really opens up that door, because we all have something in common. And it's our duty to find that commonality instead of that difference, right?
Yeah, I'd say, and
Yeah.
that, the commonality and the difference, that's the beauty. That's where the beauty is, actually, in my mind. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
seeing both is critical, to your point.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that you shared that. It's, being vulnerable together here. I appreciate that. And
Mm.
I actually had chills as you're talking about your story, because it's true. We walk around at 1 or 5 in the morning, and there's privilege in that. There's something. There's a level of comfort, and then as you're talking, there's a level of discomfort.
Yeah.
And and back into where I was in my story, there's that
Yeah.
discomfort. There's actually a level of shame. There's a level of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
And I was terrified, actually, at that moment, when I recognized my purpose. I wasn't living out my purpose. That's what this show is
Mm.
all about, right? I was
Yeah.
trying to bring out the best of people all around me, and I was recognizing I wasn't doing that in the very people that I was looking at in front of me, that
Mm.
were struggling, that actually needed my help,
Mm. Yeah.
where everybody else didn't really need my help.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that was easier, I don't know. But I was so terrified that I sat there and I was basically shaking inside. And I couldn't sleep that night. And I approached the group the next morning to ask if I could open up, because I just needed to share how I felt I was dishonest. I wasn't as open as I could have been. I wasn't answering the questions fully the day before, and that I was committing to change, because I actually came out emotionally saying I recognized I had this unconscious bias. I became conscious, which means
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually got real present. I got real deep, and I got vulnerable, because I felt like that was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm a bad person. I'm not. I'm a very kind and loving, and I wasn't doing that for the very people maybe at the time I was uncomfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
But these very people that I was actually holding back were actually holding me up. They picked me up during this event because as I was looking out to like Nikia and
Yeah.
other folks that are different than myself, they looked at me with bright eyes that
Mm.
was just sharing the love of, okay, you're being vulnerable with us. You want to help. And that was
Yeah.
to me like it was a connection where everything started to change. To your question about how to ignite happy spark, this was the initial spark of, oh my God, I needed to change. And at that point I changed my purpose to start to say, you know what, I see a beauty in people all around me. There's a light in all of us. And
That's
then when
it,
I started
right?
to look past the barriers that are in front of us, I started to see the beauty, and that the beauty in the eyes of like Nikia, for example,
Yeah.
started to get me to change and be different. And I committed coming out of that D&I event to be a difference. And that one of the ways is I needed to be different. So I actually started this process, this accountability reminder, which is a pink pen.
Yeah.
I from that day forward, I carried a version of this pink pen with me since 4 years ago, and I write
Yeah.
contracts with this. I write thank you notes, whatever it is. This is what I'm doing. I write a note to my family
Yeah.
for their birthday cards, whatever. It's in a pink pen because it's my reminder to look for differences, welcome them, accept that.
I love that. And it's so true. And really, I mean, it's amazing how, we take this event and then kind of morph it into something that, we can really do something with instead of
Yeah.
just coming out of that event saying, "Oh, that was great," and then not doing anything. And I love the pen because I'm a I love to journal. My whole transformation started with, just like you were saying, understanding kind of where I was. And then once I started to understand where I was and I got real vulnerable with successes that I've had in my life and then not so great things that have happened in my life, and you know and all of that accountability and all of that responsibility, and then just saying, okay, well, what do I want to do with the time that I have left?
Mm,
And that's it. Like, what happened wasn't wrong, but now you have an ability to just change that direction
love it.
and change that direction for people, and help people along that way. And so I'm really excited that you had that within yourself, but then also now wanted to kind of transform that into being able to give that to other people. And so
Thank you.
how have you been able to do that with Ignite Happy?
Yeah, I mean, to get to there, there were many moments. I love your point around going from here.
Yeah.
um, I like reflecting, and a lot of the stories in my upcoming book talk about reflection of stories we've had, and how does it translate to the world we're in, and to how we use it to move forward and learn and grow from it. So I love,
Hmm.
to your point. I go back and realize I wasn't the best leader, caretaker, friend. I mean, I learn from that. I don't beat
Yeah.
myself up over it. I have to
Yeah.
learn from it and move forward so I can be better. I think a lot of us get stuck in what happened in the past. You've heard that, right? People live in the past. They live through the small rearview mirror. They don't look forward in the big windshield. Like we have to live today, right now, and
Well,
take
and
those as a way to move forward.
and a lot of people can't forgive themselves for any things that have happened in the
Right.
past, or they beat themselves up on. And to make a point where you're talking about just kind of self-talk is a huge thing. And so when
Yeah.
people, one of the things that I work with a lot with individuals, and I'm sure you do too, is just, what are the words that are coming out of your mouth? And how do other people hear that? But then
Yeah.
also, how do you hear that? Like, what are you saying to
Yeah.
yourself?
Yeah.
Because those are the words that you hear the most. And so the more that we can lift ourselves up, push through, and yeah, I'm a huge
Love it.
person on reflection, because really when I started this journey for myself, one of the things was like, okay, I had heard about journaling and I knew the effects,
Mm-hmm.
but I looked
It's
at
huge.
blank pages, but I didn't really know what to do with it. So I started to understand, okay, what did I want for myself, right? Like, what was going
Mm-hmm.
to be a successful week? Let me map that out. But then let me reflect on how I did. Did I do the things that I wanted to? If not, why? Did I consciously make those choices, or did I subconsciously choose to do something else that wasn't as difficult, at that time. And then eventually you start to just mold yourself and move yourself in different directions. And the busier you get, the more energy you have, because you're doing things for yourself that bring you joy, that bring you happiness, and you're being mindful and purposeful along the way. And that's it's a huge place for people to get to.
Yeah, no, totally connected with what you're saying too about the steps we take, and how purposeful that is, and building trust with ourselves. Having that commitment to say, I'm going to look and reflect, and I'm going to modify and get better. Because that's where I was. I was at this moment where I was at this event, and think about this for a second. We live in our little bubbles, right? We're protected. We're creatures where we have fight or flight. We need to thrive in our world. A lot of people I was protecting self-preservation. I was, preserving life and protecting what I knew. What I realized at that moment is I was so ashamed my bubble burst, and I was sharing to people what was going on, and I was sharing. People actually picked me up and they hugged me at the end, and we were all committed to change. And my bubble expanded. When my bubble actually expanded, allowed me to actually look around and get silly a little bit, to start to look at life differently, to get curious, start to live with wonder again. Because I grew up as a CPA and as a financial person. I had to kind of toe the line, right? I was very compliant through my years at work in corporate America. And one day I was actually working on my cell phone. I was actually sitting there working, and my daughter was there doing her homework. She completed her homework, and she's like, "Hey, Dad, I'd love to get a dessert, and as a reward or a sweet treat." And I'm like, it's the middle of the week. It's a school week, and we typically don't, do desserts during the week. And I kept, going on my phone, acting like I was really, solving world's problems at work and on my cell phone. And she's like, "Come on, Dad, like that was a big effort." And I'm like, "Well, what do you want? Like ice cream? We don't want to do that. We don't want to do cake or cupcakes or cookies." She's like, "How about Italian ice?" And I'm like, "Okay, that's not so bad." And she's like, "How about watermelon Italian ice?" And I'm like, "Okay, that sounds like that's healthier." So she grabbed it. We took the lid off the side, and we actually split it a little bit. I went back to my phone, and this was another event that woke me up. And what happened is, like, she was done and she was smiling. I put my phone down. I looked at her. I said, "Oh, you're really happy." And she's like, "Yeah, that was really good." Then out of the corner of my eye, this lid was looking at me. This lid was upside down. And I looked at my daughter, and I'm like, "Do you see, do you see this?" You kind of like, so I was being silly in the world. I took this lid and I turned it upside down, and it was this one-eyed smile, which is, it's the logo of Ignite Happy. And it's the logo of my upcoming book. And it's I'm pointing at her, and she's like, "Oh my God." And her eyes and her mouth opened up like it was the first time we saw Disney and Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. And we were both in awe. And at that moment, I realized that the lid wasn't upside down. I was upside down. Yeah. And what I realized is that the love and the joy, it's all within me to connect in the world. And right here is where it is. And I'm on my phone. Until I put my phone down, I didn't recognize the beauty and the joy. It was right here.
And it's simple things, right? Like, it doesn't have to be these grand events. Like this simple little thing that, you got silly with your daughter has just such a relieving effect on people, for your daughter, for yourself, with stress, all of that, right? But if we can't take time to be present, if we don't establish that family is a priority, and we have to make that a priority, and it's work, and all of it is work. And if we're not putting effort into it, then it becomes burdensome. We don't really enjoy it. So everything requires effort. Everything requires movement, and you just have to move it in the direction that you want to.
Yeah, that's key, to take the effort and the action point. I think a lot of us get stuck. I mean, there's a survey that I saw that 70% of people are unhappy just because they're actually stuck in boring routine that they're not moving forward. They're not where they want it to be. And you can't get anywhere if you're not, taking steps forward. Just so you can see it. That's the one-eyed smile that was actually theirs. So it's on my phone. So it's
it's a good reminder.
I put my phone down a little bit. But that was the moment where I said, "Oh my God, I got to do a business plan." I wrote out a business plan. I'm like, I got to help people find this joy and this happiness. And I wrote the two-page business plan. And as I started writing, I started reflecting out on, a story. And to your point about the power of journaling, the power of actually putting information down on a piece of paper, it was
Hmm.
therapy. It was amazing. Like I found joy in writing. I never had a dream to write a book. I'm about to launch a book in the next month.
It feels
Never had a,
fantastic, doesn't it?
it's amazing. So like I went from a 2-page business plan to like a 200-page book, trying to ignite people to be happy through inclusion and love and really unearth their possibilities that live within them.
Yeah. And it's, and it's a great feeling to be able to, say, okay, well, I've taken things from this level to this level, and I'm going to write a book. And regardless of what happens, the ability to write a book and publish a book, is there for everyone. It's not limited to anybody. And so I had that same thing where, it took me a long time. And then it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, I can self-publish my own book if I want to, and here we
Yeah.
go. Like,
Good for you.
I
Good for
love
you.
it.
That's great.
I love it. Yeah, no, and that's fantastic. And so obviously the book will be a lot in the work that you've been doing over the past few years.
Yeah, absolutely. The book started out purely in happiness, and it was actually called Ignite Happy at one point. And I started a company called Ignite Happy. And as I was going through my journey over the last 3 years of writing it, I recognized that my joy comes from seeing the joy in others. And I
Yeah.
was seeing that through inclusion. I was seeing that
Hmm.
through actually sharing love and exploring love in different ways.
Hmm.
And then it morphed into a third level, which is like it's around possibilities. And what I realized is that my highest goal, my highest purpose is about possibilities. Because I
Mm.
was, when I think back about when I was young, I was behind as a child. I was actually a premature baby, and I was behind for many years. And my
Mm.
parents were hoping I'd be average in a good way, in a supportive way. And then I realized as I grew through a lot of their encouragement and growth that happened over the years, I realized no, average is that's not good enough, and I needed to
Yeah.
take effort every day. So that's
Yeah.
that's something I recognize was really really important. And what I want to do when I see people actually realize that they're possible, that there's
Hmm.
endless amounts of possibilities, and there's a beauty in all of us. There's a light in all of
Hmm.
us that actually could be turned on high. And when I see that, and when I see people's eyes open up, and I see people get emotional with me, and I see people stop snarking at the word happiness or joy at work,
Yeah.
then you know what that does? I I'm super excited.
That's,
I'm
yeah.
I'm in the air.
Well,
So
and
that's
that's
where
the
joy's
amazing
coming from me.
thing. Yeah, and that's the amazing thing that people really need to understand is that there's
Mm,
something for everyone. We all have something unique and special with inside of us that it's really up to us to discover what that is, to develop what that is, and then to give that back to the world, right? Like it's
yeah,
this is our wheel that we need to move, but we need help along the way. And
yeah,
so having a supportive platform with Ignite Happy allows people to feel that support, allows people to understand that, hey, I can take this. And it feels good to do things along the way and to say, hey, I'm going to do this, and then do it. And then you realize that if I say that I do things and then I just put the effort in and then I do it, that I can continue to take that along, and who knows where it can go, right? It can lead to writing a book.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a living proof of that philosophy. And I appreciate your mention of the book that way, because that's exactly what it is. I share
Yeah.
vulnerable stories. I share real life examples. I share exercises within the book. And then throughout the book, there are questions or proposed actions. So I call them intentional practice actions for folks to actually take every day. Take
Yeah.
every day. It could be using a pen like this, or it could be looking for gratitude. And there's more complex and expansive ideas in there. The idea is moving to a different direction, like having faith, going a certain direction, knowing that you're going to go somewhere better and not really sure where you're going to end up. To me, that's faith, that's trust, that's belief. Those are the kind of words that people really need to embrace. And I try to encourage that throughout the book, to say, this is possible. You have it in you. Let's go. Like, let me help you.
And that's really where you need that support system, because I've heard it along the way where you just have to trust the process, because results don't get seen very often, and even at times when we hit goals we don't feel like we accomplished it because we feel like there's more to accomplish, and so we don't take time to celebrate these things for ourselves. And so therefore, if we don't celebrate them, it just goes by the wayside, and then we don't feel like we're getting anywhere. And so that's why it's breaking things down. It's saying, okay, if this is what I want, I've got to do these small pieces to help move myself that way. And then as you start to move, celebrate these things, because it's hard work, but all of it's hard work. Whether you're unhappy and miserable with life, it's hard. Or if you're thrilled and everything is on fire and you're truly thriving, it's still hard, but it feels so much better because, you know, this is your movement, not somebody else's movement.
Yeah, I love that. You know, it is those small moments, and we just have to take them and trust that we're moving forward. And I do think the key is that knowing that we all have that ability. Granted, we're all in different places. How we started this event,
Yep.
you know, there are different barriers for all of us, and there are fewer for some, and there are things that are put on us, that were taught to us, that were told to us, that, you know, since we were a baby. And I think that's part of the problem. Is like we come into this world, and then we're taught so many things, and it's not the pure human way. And we take certain steps where we feel entitled, or we feel like we're better. And I think we need to turn that into, if we feel like we're that way or we're privileged, then we need to help each other.
Yeah.
Like, how do we put each other on an equal playing field so we could actually all embrace and enjoy life like we should? And you mentioned that earlier. Like, I think we all have that ability, but we have to let our guards down. We have to figure out who our authentic selves really are. Like, you know, so as we work towards something, are we working towards something somebody told us to be, or are we actually working towards something that is really meant to be for who I am? And one of my weaknesses is not stopping to celebrate. I want to keep pushing, and I need to do a better job at that. At the same time, accomplishments are what get me joy. It's actually finding that joy along the way. It is the writing, it's the journaling, it's having conversations like this, it's having conversations with other people that really want to listen and be curious and actually have discussions. It doesn't mean anybody's exactly right, because I don't think anybody is. It's that ability to be curious and to listen and to build and be genuine, to be actually interested in someone. Like, when I talk to leaders, like, be interested in the people you're talking to. Don't have your agenda and push it. Like, just step in and be genuine.
Yeah. Or then, you know, just don't do it. Like, if you don't want to be somewhere having a conversation, then just don't do it. Don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's so much worse, you know, but that's it. You know, being present is very difficult. So put your phone down. How many conversations have you had with somebody and their phone goes off, and in the middle of a conversation, they could be talking to you or you're talking to them, and they're nodding their head, but they're looking in their phone, nodding their head. They are no longer listening to you. And the direct message is, what you're saying is no longer important to me.
Yeah.
And that's a hard message to receive.
Yeah. My phone just went off, and it was hard.
Yeah.
Because we train ourselves that way. You know, like, you know, if I saw you on the street, Scott, and, you know, and we walk by each other, we would typically say, "Hey, how are you?" I think now we'd stop and talk to each other, but "Hey, how are you?" We'd keep walking. So we actually train ourselves to do things that don't allow us to be present. Like, "How are you?" And then I walk away and I don't listen to what your answer is. That's a problem. Simple. Simple. Yeah. Guess what? We train ourselves to believe like that's a problem, or it is a problem, that we don't want to listen. We train ourselves that happiness is actually temporary. Happiness is a choice. Happiness is a skill. Happiness is a habit. Happiness is what you want to make it. And to your point earlier, we all have it, and it's a unique thing. I think the problem is it's not globally defined.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem. And I think people are afraid to compare that. Hey, someone's going to put something on Facebook that they're really happy. Like, don't compare. Like, it's not compare. Like, what is our happiness?
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I'm happy. You know, and a lot of people will see that with, you know, people working out and posting a video, and it's like but, you know, that doesn't have to be you. Like, the things that bring me joy don't have to be the same things that bring you joy, but you have to discover what brings you joy. Maybe it's reading a book, maybe it's baking, maybe it's cooking, maybe it's going for a hike, maybe it's going for a walk, but find something that brings you joy so that you can then work on that. And, you know, maybe it's woodworking, anything. It's
anything. To your point, I think it comes down to acceptance of that thing, whatever that is that brings joy, and not
Mm-hmm.
let people judge it. Because
Yeah.
I feel we live in a society where we're constantly judged, we're constantly comparing,
Mm-hmm.
we're afraid to not look good, so we're all kind of like being pushed into our own little bubbles, and we're afraid to come out, and then we wonder why 70% of people are unhappy.
Yeah. Well,
you know
that's it, because you're living to other people's standards of your own version of yourself, because you haven't defined
Absolutely.
what you want. And it's a good outlet for stress, right? Like if you've got this thing that gives you this enjoyment and this happiness, then at times when you're stressed and when you need, because we all need it, just like a rice cooker, we all need a pressure valve, right? Like it builds
Yeah,
and builds and builds, and then if we don't have an outlet for it, what happens? We start acting, in ways that we don't really want
that's
to, that are
exactly right.
not very productive for us. And so, do those things, and if you've got kids, bring them along, teach them, and if
Yeah,
you're just starting out, teach you both. There's fun in all of that, and then it gives,
yeah.
children, ways to understand healthy habits and routines and healthy ways to relieve their stress and all of those fun things that we all really need.
Yeah, we absolutely do. I mean, having more joy than the misery in life brings happiness. And I think a lot of us are comfortable maybe more on the negative or misery because we feel
Yeah.
surrounded. We feel, I think some of our insecurities get connected to that, be it self-doubt. Like I had self-doubt writing my book, and I still do, right?
Oh
I'm
yeah.
overcoming that. And there's a lot of things, a lot of barriers that we all have in different forms. And I think, overcoming that is truly being ourselves. Because that way you get, imagine being yourself and not trying to be somebody else, like how much easier life is. And
It's so much
that's
easier.
so much easier.
And
I'm not,
but that's when
doesn't give you,
really people flourish, because it's all of a
yes,
sudden, yes, I can just be who I want to be. I can focus on the things that I'm good at. I know the things that I'm bad at, and I might still work on them, but more than likely, sometimes I may never even overcome them. So let me learn how to work around that, right? Like, and
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's
absolutely. I mean, because just being yourself, that doesn't mean, you know, finding happiness or experiencing happiness in the world, and that puts unhappiness on somebody else.
mhm.
That doesn't count. So being yourself, but then trumping somebody else or hurting somebody else indirectly, I think
Yes.
that's where that we need to be conscious. That's where we need to be curious. And there's some things I have fun with in my book around how to help people to say, no, stop right here.
Hmm.
Like let's explore this in our mind and start to change our way of thinking. And there's some fun ideas in the book to help us there. I mean, one simple thing that I talk about when I'm out doing keynotes is especially in today's day and age, we wear masks,
Yeah.
right? A simple metaphor is when we think about the mask that we have on, think about that mask as the barrier of being our true self, the
Mm.
barrier of how we've been acting prior to when the pandemic actually started. Because really, metaphorically, we've been hiding behind something. And what I'm really
Yeah.
encouraging people as we start to take our mask off full time, hopefully soon,
Hmm. Hmm.
how do we really want to show up? Like, who is that person? Do we want to speak from a point of love, a point of joy, a point of curiosity, of being a kid again? Because we all have a kid inside ourselves that got diminished just because we became adults and had all these responsibilities we need to live up to. We were told
Isn't
to be
that
this
true?
or all this and that, right? And when I started to allow my kid to come out and imagine again, I saw that one-eyed smile, right? I
Yeah.
saw the ability where joy came from. And I don't know if you can see in the picture behind me, but those are all pictures of one-eyed smiles.
Oh, nice.
I've seen hundreds of them, and other folks have seen hundreds of them. And they send them to me because what's amazing is random things that really are not so random are right in front of us.
Isn't that the
When we start
truth?
to It's so true. When we start to actually open up our world in a different way, like this one-eyed smile for me, you start to discover life
You start to,
differently.
yeah, yeah.
You start to see them all the time. In fact, I was writing my last chapter this week, 2 days ago, and I was taking a break, going on a walk, staring out into the lake. And I'm not kidding you, Scott. I look to the bottom. I have chills telling you this. Look to the bottom, and there's this one-eyed smile looking at me. So it's like you talk about how I want to reflect to the world a certain way. I look in the water, and there's just one-eyed smile looking back at me, filled with joy. And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
it.
Well, and that's really where, for me, I'm a big universe guy, and I think that the
Right.
universe gives us signs that sometimes we don't see. But if we're paying attention, we start to see it. And, it's that one-eyed smile that lets you know that you're on the right path, that
Absolutely.
you're following the right journey, and what you're doing is not wrong, and keep going, because it's difficult, right? Like, I'm sure there's times writing the book that it gets frustrating and you're just like, I don't know, this doesn't sound right. Maybe this isn't going to come to. So there's a lot of different emotions and things that
Oh
happen
yeah. Yeah.
along with getting to this point, and then seeing that smile just allows you to understand that it was all worth it, and
Yeah.
it's about to be done, and all of those things that go into it.
Yeah, it's a different level of experiencing the world. To your point about the universe, and when I go out and speak, I'll say to folks like, "Dare do I talk about connecting with the universe?"
Mm,
And what I mean by that is there's a level of happiness and fulfillment that lives within us that actually is living with awe and wonderment.
mm,
That wonderment of what could be around the next corner. And that means, guess what? We need to be present. We
mm.
need to go back to that moment where the D&I event, like where all of a sudden I got real curious, conscious, and like it was terrifying. Yet the beauty of what that gave me is this level of wonderment and awe that I could now see things because I want to. And I'm going
Yeah,
to be vulnerable. I'm not going to have all the right answers. I'm going to be uncomfortable. And I'm going to share love and be genuine with people. Because when I do that, people pick me up. And
yeah,
to your point about the universe, just a quick story. I was heading over to Copenhagen on a plane, long flight by myself, and I was attending this conference. It was called the Happiness at Work Conference, right?
hmm,
And there's this World Happiness Report that comes out every year, and the Scandinavian countries are always top three, top five, and I'm like, what the heck's going on over there? So I'm going to fly over there and figure it out, right? They know what's going on. So I went there and I felt a little guilty. I was missing one of my son's baseball games. Like I was leaving the family for the long weekend. It just felt weird. I always travel with my families, and besides when I'm traveling for work. And so I fell asleep overnight flight, and I woke up that next morning. You get those little breakfast boxes as you're
yeah.
about to land and stuff. So I opened up the breakfast box, and I'm not kidding you. Like this, there was like a cinnamon roll that was a one-eyed smile. I'm like, oh my god, this
Mm.
is exactly where I need to be. This is
And do you
exactly where
take
I need to
pictures?
be.
Do
I
you
have
take
it.
pictures of that? Yeah, that's good. Because
I take pictures of all of them at this point. Yeah.
I I collect pennies, because at various times I've asked my dad. My dad passed away when I was a senior in high school, and when I was taking care of my mom, it was such. There was some difficult days and times and things like that, and different events that we would go to, and I'd ask my dad to send me a penny and let me know he was with me.
Uh,
And man enough, I have found some pennies in some random
that's awesome.
places that, and it's not like accidents, because I started to pick up on it. Like, I would be having a thought, I'd be having a conversation in my mind about a topic that I wanted to kind of address, or something that I was thinking about. And then I remember even one time pulling up into a baseball field, having this thought. I opened up my car door, I put my legs down, and there was a penny right there in the middle. I could have parked anywhere in this grass field,
Yeah,
and I found this penny, and it
that's
just allowed
beautiful.
me to
Beautiful
just
story.
understand whatever conversation I was having in my head, that I needed to stay with that, right? Like, and
Yeah,
it's, yeah,
yeah.
love it.
No, that's a beautiful story. I love it, and I do think there's a level that you're thinking about. You allow that to happen. That
Mm,
penny was likely there, and
of
maybe it was
course.
there for you. Maybe it was there for you when you were ready to see it. Maybe you parked there before, now who knows? You were ready. You
Yeah.
believed,
Hmm.
and that's the key is to our happiness, to actually to kind of relieve ourselves of the things that haven't gone so well. The struggles with your dad in those moments. Yet you saw the beauty in what could be, and you connected to something that was powerful, so you
Yeah.
could actually see. No, you know what? There's something bigger than us, and that's the thing is like if we get outside of our own bubbles and start to see that as humans and we interact together, there's something bigger than ourselves. And that's where
Yeah.
we all need to kind of realize that we can connect in a unique way with our family members that have passed or people that are existing today. And right now we have an
Yeah.
opportunity to live with a purpose that's unbelievable and amazing. And what do we want to do with
Absolutely.
it, right? And it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be this huge declaration. To your point earlier, simple, right?
Hmm.
What do you believe in? And then live it out one step at a
Yeah.
time. And then
Yeah.
start to look for things in life a little bit differently. Like you look for pennies. I recognize these one-eyed smiles. Whatever it is that makes us like thrive and get excited and be invigorated in life. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what the joy is to me. And that really unlocks the beauty and the endless possibilities
All of it. Yeah.
that reside in all of us.
Yeah. And so how do you help folks with your company do that? I know you talked about, you go out and do some speaking events, but, with your organization, how are you helping folks?
I think a couple of ways. One is the book. So that
Yep.
when folks pick up the book, you could go at this a few different ways. One is you could go at it individually and start to explore the world a little bit differently. My goal is to happily encourage people to take action and to move forward and to connect to what I believe are opportunities that really reside around all of us and become powerless.
Yeah.
Limitless. We go from powerless to becoming limitless. And then folks could actually share that with a partner, which I would recommend, encouraging people to do this with someone else, because they'll help each other make sure they go through the steps every day. Or you could bring this into the workplace as with teams or organizations. And the second thing is I'm out there speaking. So I do workshops. I'll do speaking engagements depending on the need of an organization. I was just speaking at the World Happiness Foundation, for example, on culture and people in the workplace. And I was just talking about how we could take steps to really live life as our happy, authentic selves, and how to lead and engage with others, how to lead as an ally, really these human to human interactions that we're talking about. It's just how to put them into simple steps for individuals, teams, organizations, and leaders, like leaders to start to believe the importance of their people and actually genuinely care. When we do that, amazing things happen, no matter what it is, in business, in the community, for ourselves. And imagine if we could actually do that a bit more every day.
Absolutely. I mean, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Excellent.
It's been fun. It's been a blast.
It's an amazing journey, right? Yeah. And it's fun when it feels like that, right? It's a lot of work, but then when it also feels like it's just starting to take off, it's like, oh, there's so many things to do with this, and there's so many ideas, and there's so many avenues.
Yeah, it's exciting, and folks, depending on how you talk to, would say we need this right now. Our world needs this. Like, we always need it right now, in particular, coming out of this pandemic, and hopefully there's clarity in the future. Let this be our awakening, because I think you and I have had our awakening, right? We had the ability to say, wow, let me sit back and take a look at life. Let me look at it deeply, and then let me connect differently. And oh my God, I'm going to embrace those differences, be it a penny, be it a one-eyed smile. Those one-eyed smiles are unique. Each penny is unique, and that represents who we all are. And that ability to be unique and accept that uniqueness and be silly at times, like to be silly and connect in ways that allow us to actually come alive.
Yeah. And I've saved every single one of those pennies that I find. Yeah. Because I'll do something with it. I haven't decided what yet, but yeah.
Is there one that stood out to you aside from the one in that parking lot?
There's a couple that I have written down some stories with, but just even being at like an Alzheimer's event with one of them that stuck out. That was really, really impactful. And that's really where the ones that are impactful, where it was least expected, but yet like the thoughts were so intense. Those are the ones that I typically, I'll write a little note with. But yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. And one thing, I appreciate all of your time. You've been very, very generous, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's been amazing, and I feel like we could keep going for a while. But but one thing that I wanted to, I saw about you that was really fascinating is that you foster, raise, and train guide dogs. Is that so? How did that whole thing get started for you? And that's an amazing thing that you've been doing. So yeah.
We actually love dogs, my wife and I, and before we had kids, we were going to pick up a lab. We didn't know exactly where from or what kind, and we saw a service dog out and about, and we're like, oh, let's learn more about the program. And the program was called Guiding Eyes for the Blind. And we contacted them, and you actually had to get certified, you had to get trained, but it wasn't that hard. It's just, the beauty of the program is these dogs, typically you'd raise a dog and then give it back in a year, so it could help out someone that needs assistance for whatever reason. But we couldn't give the dog back. We said, we can't do that. We'd love to raise a puppy for a year. We just couldn't We couldn't think about giving the puppy back. So there was, you know what I mean? So there's,
Yeah.
so I praise the folks that do that, because they're bringing these puppies back into the world for folks that need emotional help, that need help seeing their way through life and other things. And for me, there was actually another part. There was actually a part where the program has broods. So we actually said, could we sign up for that program, where they actually, I would say, are probably tops of the litter, and they actually have the puppies, take care of the puppies initially. Um, um, or you could actually have these dogs have the puppies back at the kennel, which we do for safety concerns. And the reality is we probably, we would be too nervous something happening that would go wrong.
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful thing, because these dogs are amazing. They actually can connect with us better than I could have ever imagined. A dog, they hear us, they listen in a different way. Most importantly, they showed us before we had kids how to love. Like this is truly about the unconditional love that dogs have. They live in the present, they live in the moment to please others.
I mean, there's nothing like coming home and having a dog greet you, right? Like
for me, I agree with that. Yeah.
You know, and
our third dog, we're on our third dog too, just so you know.
Great.
So yeah, it's crazy.
I took that analogy one time, and I was just like, okay, well, if I don't have a dog right now, but if I walked home or I came home and my dog was that happy to see me, shouldn't I be that that happy the minute anybody that I love, comes walking through that door? And I had a little mind shift that, like, yes, 100%. And I've changed the way that I interact when I come home, or when my wife comes home, or somebody that I love comes through the door.
Awesome.
Because shouldn't I be just as happy as a dog?
Well, I love that. Just it's that level of being present. And you're very in tune with that, which is wonderful. And that level of, I'm glad you're home, because we don't know what happens every day until something happens. And, appreciating that moment every time, I think, is a good lesson for everybody. And I got to do better. I'm going to commit with it. I'm going to make sure anytime anybody walks in, I'm going to get up, give them a hug.
That's it.
Because it's just, why not?
It just changes. It changes everything, because you're so happy when somebody greets you that way. Like that's fantastic. Regardless of what happened in your day, like that's an amazing way to come home. And so that's awesome.
At first it might be like, is everything okay?
What? Exactly.
Our way,
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Darrin. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say a brief connection too with our first dog. God, he died for the blind dog. Thelma, our dog was Thelma, and she passed a couple of years ago. And we're still grieving, and we miss her a ton. And to your point about seeing things in the universe in a different way, like we were on a family walk, and there was this like rabbit or bunny that was sitting on the side of the road when we were walking the other dogs, and this rabbit didn't move. It was just staring at us. And we all said, oh my God, that's Thelma. Because what rabbit wouldn't move when you got two dogs lunging at them? And
absolutely,
she was just staring at us. It was an emotional moment for us.
Yeah.
But it was a beautiful moment, because it allowed us to like just connect in the world and say it's okay. Like folks that have passed, they're with us in some way.
Oh, I see that. I see it all the time in my backyard. I've got cardinals all the time. And I didn't first start understanding it again while I was taking care of my mother. And I got to a point where towards the end, it was extremely, extremely difficult. And I didn't know how much longer I could keep taking care of her. And every day I would look out the window and I would see a red cardinal in the tree, and I would feel my dad's presence. And I would be like, well, I will get through today. And it was enough strength to get me through today. And then I would see another cardinal tomorrow, and that got me through tomorrow. And so now it's amazing. Again, I'm having thoughts. All of a sudden, I look out my back window, and a cardinal flies right up to the tree in front of me. And, and it's one of those things where, take it for what it is. But for me, it makes me really understand and just in tune with my thoughts, with what I'm seeing, with how I'm feeling, and what these messages are telling me. And it's a powerful thing. It does give you chills. It does give you,
Mhm.
not everyone can understand it, but it's okay. But for me, it really does some amazing things.
Yeah, it's awesome. You get acceptance for you being you and
Yeah.
accepting those stories. And yeah, I
And it
think it's
brings,
really
and it brings
incredible.
peace. It's seeing the money. It brings,
Yeah,
knowing that, like, okay, there's a connection there regardless. And so
yeah,
you automatically make that connection, and it feels good.
it does. And it allows us to, I think, move forward, take the steps
Yeah.
where we want to go.
And recognize the pain that comes from having lost
Hmm.
a pet or a loved one, but then understanding and feeling that they're still with us, right? Like a lot of the journey starting my own company, there was a lot of times when it was just like, can I still do this? Am I still, like, should I go back to work full time? Like, what am I doing? But you draw strength on everyone in their fight and their struggle and what they went through, and you realize that you're not alone. You can pull from all of that. So,
We're not
you
alone.
know yeah, no, not at all. I don't feel it. At least for me, I draw on all that strength from those from before.
I agree with you. Yeah,
We
I
strive
think
to
it's
avoid.
important to know we're not alone and find the avenues where if we feel like we are, then find the outlets,
That's
whatever
it.
that is. Try
That's
to
it.
find it. Yeah,
Excellent. Well, Darrin, we're coming up on an hour. I want to be cognizant of your time. I appreciate all of this. This was an amazing conversation.
I agree. Thank you.
For really not knowing you before today's conversation, I really do appreciate all of the information, and certainly what you're doing for those out in the community, because that's really what the biggest impact is helping everyone, just try to find little bits and pieces for themselves. And so thank you for all of that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, and love the path you're on, and look forward to
You
see you
too.
around in the community. Take care.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks,
All right,
Darrin.
you got it. See ya.